overview.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 8, which is the US59 Congestion Mitigation Study. Alan Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you recall, the legislature targeted funding, which we commonly call Rider 42, to develop and advance projects that could benefit the state's most congested corridors. A number of important projects are moving forward and being implemented. For example, some of the interchange improvements at 610 and US 59 Southwest Freeway. One of the small projects that you authorized was to look and see what we could do that might be much more near term than a major reconstruction of a freeway. We selected the US 59 corridor from downtown Houston out to Beltway 8 to look for management and operational strategies that could provide significant benefit to improving travel reliability, reducing crash experience, and hopefully reducing the overall travel time along the corridor. I'm pleased to introduce Brent Christensen from Alliance Transportation Group, the consultants we've had working on this effort. He's going to summarize for you 3 major recommendations that we have for this corridor, and I'm very excited to see the possibility, since I drive that freeway every day, to see some relief that'll happen perhaps while I'm still here. So, Brent?
All right. Thank you, Alan. Good morning. My name is Brent Christian. I am with Alliance Transportation Group, joined by Mike Heath, our project principal, this morning. We appreciate the opportunity to come here today to present an overview of the current progress of our study. A little background, our corridor and this study is really focused on a segment of the 59 corridor that extends from 527, spur 527 to Beltway 8 South. It's about a 13-mile segment of the corridor. We began this project back in April of 2014 and expect to be finishing the project up by the end of this year. Some background. Many of us probably all too well know that this corridor is very congested. Back in 2014, TxDOT estimated that the annual congested cost for the delay along the corridor is in excess of $215 million. In addition to that, it's a stressful piece of roadway to ride every day. It's unreliable. Many of the peak trips that we take are sometimes 6 to 10 times longer than what we would experience in off-peak normal flow conditions. And for a section of the freeway, that part that's inside the loop 610, it's outdated. This was not originally designed to interstate highway standards. And so what we find out there today is there's many sections inside the loop that just do not meet current freeway desirable design standards. Challenges. As we progressed with this study, just background, this is a Rider 42 funded project. And what that means is Rider 42 was meant to identify those transportation improvements that brought kind of the most bang for the buck and could be implemented in relatively a short period of time. It was not meant to necessarily look at large capital cost, long-term implementation projects, but it didn't exclude those either if we found projects that we felt could provide very powerful and impactful solutions. So we were looking at more of the near-term and mid-term type improvements. The other thing that we know is that this corridor is built out. There's very limited right-of-way. It's costly to obtain. It's expensive to build additional capacity along this corridor. So we focused our solutions on those that we felt could currently help us more efficiently use the capacity instead of creating a bunch of new capacity out there. And then because of the connectivity that this arterial has with the rest of the region, we know that as soon as we create some added efficiencies in capacity, the latent demand in the region is quickly going to use those up. So the point being there, we don't expect to solve congestion, all the congestion problems along the corridor, but what we're looking for is those strategies that can help us mitigate it. And that's what we focused on. Here's our objective. Plain and simple, we just want to improve our customers' quality of life, those people that travel the corridor on a very regular basis. What we focused on for performance measure are safety, reliability, and mobility. Mobility meaning we want to go ahead and increase the passenger throughput, move more people through the facility, and also try to reduce travel time at the same time. We had a steering committee that met several times throughout the course of the study so far, and it was really, I thought, a very active and participative steering committee. They were very critical as we brought different thoughts and design solutions to the table, that we would get their input and guidance on the ones that we felt were going to be the most implementable and those that provided the most impactful solutions. And here's some of the agencies that participated. We started out with a long list of strategies based on our technical assessment, and through the input from the steering committee I just referenced, we came back with what we feel are 3 preferred strategies. And those include access modifications, active traffic management, and then HOV and HOT lane modifications. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we mean by each of those. And then after this, I'll present what some of the perceived benefits are and expected benefits if we go ahead and implement those. So active traffic management, there's several devices along the corridor today. And what we're talking about doing as part of active traffic management is really managing the corridor in a more dynamic and active fashion than what you see today. And we would do that through a series of things. One, we would come up with new operational strategies. A lot of the strategies that we're implementing today are effective, but they certainly can be improved. We can coordinate those, and those strategies can be implemented more quickly through more real-time information. And then we would take that information and use a series of different devices out in the field, some of which you see, the dynamic message signs, lane use signals, those types of things, but others that we don't see, and that's what the inset of the picture demonstrates here. We would use those devices to help us inform and manage the traffic along the corridor on a more active basis. So we would be doing that actively, and we would actually be trying to use some of that information to actually predict some of the conditions that are going to occur before they even occur, and then implement some of those strategies. So active traffic management is very effective in not only managing the recurring conditions that we see out there, managing that congestion that comes along with the AM and PM commutes, but it's also very effective in helping us manage those incident rate related congestion. And a lot of what you heard David just talk about through the incident management program would go hand in hand with the recommendations we're talking about here. The next is access modifications. There's a high number of collisions and delay that's attributed to the merging and weaving of vehicles entering and exiting the freeway. Again, looking inside the loop, we've got an awful lot of ramps that are located very close proximity to each other, and that's probably the biggest cause for those merge weave conditions that then lead to the incidences that we so often see along the corridor. So we identified a number of what we call access modifications that will reduce the amount of those merge weave conditions. And we did this by eliminating some ramps at certain locations. And in doing so, we would require some vehicles to travel through intersections that they normally wouldn't have to today. And so in order to address that particular problem, what we've developed is a set of some ramps that would allow traffic not to have to go through those signalized intersections that would cause additional delay, but actually allow them to bypass those. Now, we recognize that there's a lot of perceived negative impacts with businesses whenever you start talking about ramps and ramp reconfigurations and closures. So we would anticipate that we need to be very proactive in a public outreach program, sit down with those businesses one-on-one and help them understand not just what the impacts are from a negative perspective, but make sure that we're talking about some of the positive impacts. And the biggest one is we're going to make this a safer corridor for their customers to travel. Just to give you an idea on where those locations are, We're starting here on the leftmost portion of the slide is West Park Drive, and this takes us to Edloe Street. So we are showing a ramp removal, and if you look at the top, that would be headed in the southbound or outbound direction. So we have a ramp removal between Wesleyan and Newcastle, and we are proposing an auxiliary lane be implemented between Chimney Rock and Fountain View leading to West Park Drive. This section's looking between Edloe to 527. So if you look in the northbound direction, the red indicates where the ramp removals would occur. And then you can see where we have shown at Kirby Drive what we mean by a bypass ramp. So again, allows those vehicles to enter onto, they would not be entering onto the main lanes, they would be entering that ramp. That bypass would allow them to carry through the Kirby Drive without going through the traffic signal. And then that would carry them down to the current entrance ramp at Greenbrier. And then we also show a ramp removal just north of Spur 527. Turn around and go back into the outbound or southbound direction. We've got the same situation with the bypass at Buffalo Speedway, where we would just reroute traffic around that signalized intersection. And what we're really gaining there, and this is important, is to make sure that we're reducing the amount of merge weave conditions, because that's what creates not only the delay and the slowdown of traffic, but also leads to a lot of the incidences along the corridor. HOT modifications. In order to address the need for added reliability, and as we did our first public meeting last year, one of the things we heard loud and clear from the public was the need for more reliability. When I get in my vehicle and I want to make a trip, I want to know that I've got a certain level of expectation that I can make that trip within a certain time frame. So reliability was one of the key concerns. And in order to address that, what we're recommending is a change to the current HOV-HOT operation from a single direction by day, time of day. So single direction, time of day, to a bi-directional 24/7 with variable pricing. Now, in implementing this, we would expect to maintain the same number of general purpose lanes, so we're not removing any of the general purpose lanes. The way that we would construct this is we would remove the concrete barriers that are currently separating the HOV lane, and we have two of those, one on each side of the lane, and we would go ahead and install instead a single center barrier and utilize the existing pavement by repurposing it out there. We've got varying widths of anywhere from 14 feet to 33 feet of pavement for the HOT lane. So we would repurpose that pavement. We'd utilize pavement markings and plastic sticks to control the access. Now, similar to what you see in some sections of I-10. Access to the existing transit facilities would be maintained by using the elevated T-ramps in a single direction. But what you can do in order to bypass those ramps, we would have the HOV-HOT lanes at grade passing past those T-ramps. Let me show you what this looks like in a section. So at the top, we're looking at that section that would be south of 610. And through that section, we're able to maintain the HOV-HOT lane in a center barrier, or center. And if you look at the bottom, where we get inside the loop, this is what we would start taking a look at, is where we're bringing those vehicles down at grade. So you would be able to have at grade direction of flow. And those vehicles are, by the way, just so you know, there's headlights and taillights there. So in the center where you see those two vehicles there that say managed lane on those are in opposite directions of travel, so 24/7. We recognize as we looked at this that we're going to have some additional design issues that were just beyond what we could do in this study to address in order to implement this. particularly at the intersections of our interchanges of 610 and 59. So if you look at the top section, what we're showing there is in order to get this in, we would have to move the northbound HOT lane. We would elevate it and move it to the south side of the facility. And then down below, as you look at what's currently anticipated for the Edloe interchange, we would maintain that same elevated managed lane on the south side of the facility and then bring traffic up to the elevated section that currently exists at Edloe. Again, some design challenges. We've met with TxDOT and discussed these with them, and I think we both walked away feeling like these are problems that can be solved. Now, the goal of the variable pricing is what we really want to do is maintain a minimum travel speed of 45 miles per hour of those, in those lanes, the HOT lanes. And the reason we want to do that is for reliability purposes. So the way that works is the single occupancy drivers would be paying a variable price for having the option of using this lane. And this solution presents an option that's currently not available today. We also recognize in implementing this type of facility that there are some enforcement issues that we need to address, and we've begun discussions with Metro on those to highlight these. We don't have the final solutions, but we know that we've got a range of options that we could use, everything from the passive pavement markings and plastic sticks to the more capital intensive, if you will, static and dynamic patrol, because it requires more personnel, more active enforcement, all the way up to the less popular video enforcement. And of course, there's some hybrid options as well. So before I get into the benefits, any questions on the options that I've just presented?
Chairman, thank you. We're going to have to sit down and have a long meeting, so I won't take a lot of time. This has been a pet peeve of mine for at least 8 years. The question being, Southwest Freeway inbound in the afternoon backs up worse than it does in the morning. I mean, it's counterintuitive. And so some things to think about before you come meet with me, and hopefully Richard will make sure this happens. How does the bypass work, for example, at Kirby? You're saying the frontage road, you suddenly have a bypass? How does that work?
The way that works is, let me get that graphic back up for you. So the way that works is what we're not showing on this is the frontage road lanes. We're showing the ramps there. And at Kirby, the way the traffic would work is if you see where the entrance ramp currently is at Kirby Drive, so we're headed in the northbound direction, that little piece of red, anything that's shown in red is where we're removing the ramp. And the reason we're removing the ramps is to remove the merge weave conditions. So instead of entering right at that particular location, we would bring that traffic up and over the Kirby Drive arterial. And that traffic would then not have to go through that traffic signal.
So it's going to be an overpass?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yep.
all. That was a simple answer to my
Okay.
question. That's all I need to know. But here's my other question, that if you eliminate the exit ramp just north of Buffalo Speedway, then that means you're going all the way back, and the exit will handle Edloe, Buffalo, and Kirby all at the same time?
That is correct.
There's no way that's going to work. I'm sorry. I mean, I drive that every day.
So what I need to emphasize here, because when we look at these access modifications and just look at them as concrete, I share your concern. The thing
for example, right now, to get the Edloe entrance, you do the loop around, and you have to wait on the frontage road currently. Now, if you add all the Kirby traffic to that, you're never going to get on the freeway from Edloe. You may as well close that entrance. So all these things, we can talk about it later.
Sure.
But I want to have a long meeting.
Judge, I'd like to be at that meeting because I drive that same stretch as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be in that meeting as well.
But maybe we ought to schedule this meeting pretty soon.
I will go ahead and remind that we are presenting these as isolated solutions, but the real benefit that can come along is when we combine the active traffic management solutions with the access modifications with the HOV, HOT lanes. And I'm not suggesting that will solve all of the congestion problems, but it certainly will address some of the issues that are being referred to. Director.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions here is that I know that when I was first hearing about this, I was thinking of some tweaking to do, anything that you could do with technologies, but now you're showing managed lanes and elevated structures. We're starting to get into some real dollars. And this freeway was opened up as a brand new freeway, I guess now about 24 years ago, I'm guessing. And what is the expected life of this freeway before TxDOT rebuilds again? Because then you have the next generation of the freeway as you start thinking about how you can put all of the elements, inclusive of transit and everything else, into a tighter package that's planned for. I know that you're right-of-way constrained. There's very limited amount that you can do with it. So my question is how much longer of a life do we see in the Southwest Freeway before you have major rehabilitation or reconstruction?
The pavement conditions there between Newcastle and Shepherd are really pretty good. So if you're talking about is the pavement aging gracefully, the answer is yes. I think the judge's point is well taken. Perhaps we need another meeting. Some of the congestion that is caused in that corridor happens there at Spur 527, particularly where we don't have a lot of width under the Montrose Double Arch Bridge. And this project is not intended to address that. However, the work that Pat Henry's doing with the 45 North improvements that we've shared and discussed will back up into this area, and we're looking at ways to get a little wider there. I guess that's a technical term, get a little wider, but perhaps another meeting we can visit about that. That's helpful.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and again, I'll go back to the Rider 42 intent was not necessarily to solve the longer term problems. There was certainly an understanding that these would not necessarily have the long life expectancy that we would have with some of the capital projects. And the reason we did look at some of these other more capital intensive ones like the HOV, HOT is because of the feedback that we were getting through the public engagement process and really trying to deal with how do we not only deal with kind of the short-term congestion problems, but also deal with the reliability issues. Okay, well, let's talk about if we go ahead and implement this, what are the expected benefits associated with those? So for active traffic management, we get quite a bit of bang for the buck. It's a 13% reduction in travel time during the daily congestion that we experience during commutes. That number even increases during incidents. Those are the non-recurring congestion that is caused by the accidents along the corridor. As far as the access modifications go, in the AM, we're reducing some of the delay by increasing travel speeds from about 2 to 9%. So maybe not real eye-opening, but certainly an improvement. And where we see even better improvement is during the PM, both in the northbound and southbound direction, of a 17 to 20% speed increase. If we take a look at the benefits with the bidirectional, the HOV, HOT lane with the variable pricing, we get a 17 to 43 mile per hour increase in the PM inbound direction. Now keep in mind that is because we currently are operating the facility in the opposite direction, right? So if you're out there today traveling in the inbound direction, you're traveling in the general purpose lanes. So that's where we see the real bidirectional benefit being of improvement. We also feel like in talking with Metro about this, it really highlights the ability to maybe make a mode shift. If people see a more reliable trip that they can make, and they have the choice, I can either use that by staying in my car, or I can make a mode choice over into public transit. There's certainly some benefit associated with that. There's also some benefit associated with emergency response personnel, since we are operating bi-directional, to make quicker response calls when an incident does occur along the facility. Those vehicles would be allowed to use the facility.
Hey, Brent, I want to add much. This also benefits Fort Bend County Transit because this goes all the way out to Beltway,
Yep.
correct? And Fort Bend Transit also serves. Commissioner, just trying to give some positive
We
comment.
got no place to park buses, so sorry about that.
And the other thing it does is it really helps, I think, make for a more efficient, more effective planning process when Metro is trying to plan for their operations. Just being able to have that bi-directional flow certainly helps them out there. Okay, so let's take a look at what that means in the numbers. Active traffic management and access modification give us a pretty strong return on investment. The benefit cost ratio there is 7 for active traffic management, and access modification is 23. Now, the managed lanes don't look as high. We feel like that's a conservative number because some of that does not account for the planning efficiencies and those types of efficiencies that are a little harder to go ahead and try to quantify. So we feel like that is probably a more conservative number there. So what are our next steps? Well, we're here to present to you this morning, and our next public meeting, our second and final public meeting, is scheduled for November the 11th. We're also encouraging folks to go ahead and visit the project website. There's a lot of information posted there that would probably help you understand the development of the program and the project. And then we also know, and haven't highlighted this, but there's a couple other big projects that are going along on this corridor, and one of those is the 5960 or 610 interchange improvements, as well as the Northeastern Highway Improvement Project. And if we were to get ahead of those projects and be able to implement some of these solutions, we feel like this could really benefit as we're under construction with those projects. So with that, I'm finished and be happy to answer any more questions.
Any more questions for the presenter, Mr. Christian? If not, thank you, sir. I do appreciate your presentation.